Welcome into the Make It Take It podcast here on Monday, April 15th. We have a super exciting show for you guys today, talking all things NBA. Playoff picture is fully out, except for the playing games so far. I'm Adam Oppenheim alongside John Yaley, Victor Kustin, Adam Mattel will be doing the producing for us today. Guys, how are we doing?
I'm great. Really excited for this episode. We have some real games to talk about. Weird end of the season, but really excited for the play-in games tomorrow, especially.
Yeah, this is where it finally gets fun. Like 20 teams make the playoffs, so now we actually get to start eliminating them. So excited to talk about it.
Absolutely. So let's start with some injury news before we talk about the games yesterday leading to the playoffs. And that was Giannis Antetokounmpo, who injured his calf in a game against the Celtics and is probably doubtful for game one, Woj said on Twitter. That's some big injury news.
Yeah, it's tough for the Bucks, but if you were to have me pick a star that I'm least scared of when they get injured, it would be Giannis. LeBron had that championship belt for a while, but Giannis, what he did, I think 3 years ago, his knee bent backwards, and then he was amazing in the finals like a week later. Yeah. Even last year, he had the back issue against Miami. They lost the series, but he looked fine the rest of the series. So I'm confident when he comes back that he'll be at that high level. The question is, how many games will he miss in the series? Will it be like last year where he comes back and it's 1-1 or 2-1, they're down? So it's been a tough end of the year for the Bucks, and that kind of just made it worse.
Yeah, I agree. And we've talked about the Bucks all year as a team that, hasn't really gotten their footing with Dame and them. And maybe this is where Dame shines and he just kind of takes over in that number one role again. But you said it best, like Giannis, he came back for that finals and was just as good as we expected him to be, if not better. And historically, I feel like this Bucks team has been pretty solid without him. And yeah, that was before the Dame years, maybe some of those stats, but they're a well-coached team. They they were a well-coached team without Giannis, but Doc has to put his head down and he's got to figure out a game plan for this team to at least just stay afloat without Giannis.
Oh, definitely agree with you guys. Really comes down to the supporting cast. It happened last year, and you got to survive the no Giannis games. They obviously have a tough matchup coming up against the Pacers. We're going to talk about a bit later. So let's go to clean the glass. Let's talk about some games yesterday that were interesting, and there were a lot of them. I think only one game had no effect on playoff teams at all. What game do you guys want to talk about?
Yeah, I think it's big, although we can talk about matchups and whatnot. I think it's a huge momentum for the Knicks to pick up an overtime win against the Bulls. A tough, gritty game headed into the playoffs to clinch them the 2 seed over the Bucks. And yes, they might get a more tough draw maybe with like a Sixers or a Heat team compared to a Pacers team. But it's just a confidence booster going in the playoffs, watching this team play with OG and really just kind of find their groove again.
Yeah, it's funny. It seems that the Knicks were the only team in the East that actually was willing to go for the 2 seed. Everyone was kind of afraid of the looming Heat or Sixers team that likely will be that 7 seed. The Bucks kind of threw and tanked their game against the Magic. The Cavs, it seemed like, definitely did. And the Knicks, who it's been their identity where, you got Thibodeau, you're going to play your guys a bunch of minutes, you're going to be strong in the regular season. So it kind of fit that they won a gritty game with Brunson being great and took the 2 seed that nobody wanted. I agree with you, Victor. I think you go in with confidence. You're the 2 seed for a reason. Obviously, Sixers have Embiid. That's real scary. Usually a 7 seed doesn't have a star like that. The Heat kind of have this mystical vibe about them that everyone's afraid of. But I think you feel good. They have a real home court, and they got it for the first 2 rounds. So I wouldn't be, scared if I were a Knicks fan.
Oh, I absolutely agree. I think there's a certain point, like Victor mentioned, where it's a confidence booster. Winning a game in overtime that was close. They've been so good with OG in the lineup. I think it's like 20-3 since he came back from injury. And it's big for the Knicks. I think they're a really good team. And honestly, if you want to make it to the finals, you have to get through the best teams anyways. So I think people always look at it as like you want the easy draw. You learned this from the Celtics a couple years ago in their finals run. Everyone wanted to avoid that Nets team with KD and Kyrie. And what did the Celtics do? They said, oh, we're going to take it. And then they swept them, and it led to, a deeper run in the playoffs. I think if you get, an easier matchup, like people want the Magic, it's hard to get going to another level when, you face like a Milwaukee or a Boston. So I think in a lot of cases, this could be super positive.
Yeah, I agree. And like a win over the Sixers and the Heat in the first round is like like another confidence booster. Like
Right.
we said, beating a good team, beating the MVP or beating the team that went to the finals, the 8 seed last year, or the conference finals. Like that's huge for a team that doesn't have as much playoff success as, not like the Sixers have a ton, but they definitely have more than the Knicks recently. And you know, I talk about this a lot on the podcast. Like Brunson, I think really gives this like Knicks team a great chance at winning. What he does at the end of games, just taking over, hitting shot after shot. This Knicks team is dangerous. It sucks they're drawing the first round, but I think with their momentum, they should be okay.
Yeah, I totally agree. I want to talk about the Suns Timberwolves because this is a game that we're going to see again in the first round, and the Suns really controlled the entire game. I'm pretty sure everyone was healthy on both sides, including Karl Anthony Towns, who obviously is just coming back from injury. But this Suns team, I mean, they're dangerous. They have the big three, and then Grayson Allen, who just actually got a contract extension today, has been, I think, the highest 3-point percentage shooter in the league. I mean, does anyone want to face the Suns now? I'm not sure.
I'm not gonna lie. If we're talking about draws, I don't think the Timberwolves are that upset with this draw. Yes, on paper it looks kind of bad, but the Timberwolves are a good defensive team. They're a team that grinds it out, and I think that they could kind of take it to this struggling Suns team and find their weaknesses. But it also could be on the other side as well, where like Kevin Durant just becomes KD in the playoffs like he always is, and D Book goes off. Maybe Bradley Beal finds that next gear. But I think both these teams should be genuinely happy with their draw because there's pros to playing both these teams, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think the Suns, the big thing for them has definitely been Bradley Beal's kind of resurgence the past month or so. We know Booker and Durant they're made men. They're going to be great. They were awesome last year. Like Booker was historically efficient.
He was so good.
And it didn't really pan out. They didn't have the depth, so they kind of almost doubled down on we're just going to go for stars.
Yeah, honestly.
Yeah, but you need Beal to be kind of that scoring leader type guy, like he was, in Washington, and he is not. He wasn't that for most of the season. But in April, he's averaging 21, 6, and 4 on a cool 60, 70, and 100 shooting splits. So obviously smaller sample, but if he's scoring and hitting threes at a really efficient clip, I would be terrified to play this team, especially a Minnesota team that has been immature in the past. We saw it 2 years ago against Memphis. We've seen it at points this season. If things start to go wrong and you're playing a team that has a Durant type veteran, I'd be nervous as a Timberwolves fan.
Yeah, I think home court advantage doesn't mean as much as, people say it does. You're talking about the Grizzlies Timberwolves series, John, a couple years ago. That's the series a lot of times I point to when people are like, so why are you picking, this lower seed team over an inexperienced team? I mean, look at that series. Both teams were young and it was awful basketball. They just kept blowing leads. There was not a ton of defense, silly fouls. It's way different pressure in the playoffs. It's a completely different season. And that should be interesting. I'm also going to talk about another game here, Lakers Pelicans. This was the last game to finish on Sunday. The Lakers were able to stay at the 8th seed, and they're going to face the Pelicans in the play-in. But LeBron James, my goodness. As Mark Jackson says, mama, there goes that man. He was unbelievable. He had 7 assists in the first 4 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, this is not the best game, I think, in terms of preview for this matchup, because I think LeBron will be different in the playoffs, and or not LeBron. I mean, the Pelicans might have a different game plan in the playoffs, but I think it just like shows like LeBron is here and he's coming for your team, and he's not going to back down. He's here to play. Even if he's the 8th seed, he could make a little like magical run like the Heat had last year or something like that.
Yeah, it's funny that it kind of worked out really well for the Lakers. Last week, they lost the game to the Warriors, and they're sitting at the 9, kind of barely above the Warriors. It looked like they didn't control their own destiny. They're probably going to be in that 9-10 game, having to win 2 kind of game 7s just to be able to play a Denver and OKC. And with an older roster, that seemed like a complete disaster. but they got the 8 seed and they seem really solid against the Pelicans team that they will play in the play-in. What's interesting for me, and we'll probably talk about this in a little bit, is what is kind of the approach if you're the Lakers? I don't want to say you tank the game, but if you win, you play Denver, who's been your kryptonite for about 2 years now. At the same time, you probably just want to win and get in. You don't want to wait for that second game, but it is something interesting to think about.
I think there's also a little personal aspect to this playing game with the AD trade and between the Lakers and stuff. So that might come into play also.
And Brandon Ingram.
Yeah, he's still on the team.
Brandon
It's
Ingram,
interesting.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Not sure there are any other, maybe Larry Nance. I don't know. I think he went from the Lakers to the Pelicans. But yeah, it was interesting seeing the Warriors because they controlled their own destiny after that Lakers game. They lost to the Pelicans, and that opened up the door for the Lakers. And that's massive, like you mentioned, John, for an older team. I think a lot of people are worried about the Pelicans in the playoffs. Also, LeBron guarding Zion like the entire game. That was unbelievable. Yeah. And Anthony Davis, I guess, just wanted to be more of a rim protector, but LeBron did a terrific job on both ends. D'Angelo Russell was hitting shots. Reeves was really solid. And for the Pelicans, Brandon Ingram, I think that was his first game back from injury. And then him along with McCollum, who was decent. But the Pelicans really didn't have a ton of offense, and they were down from the very start.
I think that's something I talked about this in a previous episode too. I think that's something this Lakers team has that a lot of LeBron teams haven't had, besides obviously maybe the Wade and Bosh team, is that they have other kind of shot creators and scorers that could do their own thing. I feel like on a lot of LeBron's teams, it was a lot of just catch and shoot 3-point guys, but there's other guys they could defer to on this team like Reeves, like Russell, guys that could go get a bucket or handle the ball other than LeBron. And I think that's just a huge advantage for this Lakers team. And that as young as they are, they have experience. Like as young as the other guys are, not LeBron and AD, obviously. They have experience. Reeves, had a good playoffs, I thought, last year.
Yes, he was very good.
And D'Angelo Russell, I feel like he's hit or miss. But he needs to be on for them to be successful.
That's the fear if you're a Laker fan, is does Russell just revert back to kind of what he's been in the playoffs? He had that awesome stretch month or two ago, and if you're a Laker fan, you're just thinking, can we please get this D'Lo in the playoffs? And he has not been great to end the year, but I do agree, Victor. It's interesting because last year they were a really strong defensive team. You had AD anchoring it, and not like the most explosive offense. You'd kind of you get LeBron and AD pretty consistently, but then a random guy, a Lonnie Walker and Austin Reeves, who would kind of have a good game. But this year, at least the second half of the season, they've been a top offense since the All-Star break. So, which bodes, well for the modern NBA. But I'm curious to see, does that continue in the playoffs when you're playing a team, assuming they make the playoffs? You're playing a team, 6-7 times in a 2-week span. They can adjust more. Obviously, like I mentioned, Russell's been shaky in the postseason. So, even though it worked out well for the Lakers, if I were a fan, I would still be a little nervous.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Any other games you guys want to talk about? Yesterday?
I don't think so.
Yesterday, yeah. I feel like we covered most of it.
Yeah, I think a lot of them were blowouts. I mean, the Mavs rested top 2 guys.
I think
maybe
they were
top
up
30.
41 and a half.
The Thunder won that.
They're up 102 to 55 going into the fourth, something like that.
Yeah, that's funny. All right, let's talk about the playing games. Do you guys want to start in the East or the West?
I feel like we covered just Pelicans Lakers, so now let's go to Kings Warriors.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. This is a tough game for me because I do like both these teams. The Kings have kind of been on a downside recently. But it's hard not to go with the Warriors and just kind of trust Steph in a 1-game situation. As much as I'm not a huge fan of the playing games, it has brought us some really good basketball. And, Steph has been good in these playing games in the past. And I think he's going to show up and the veteran kind of aspect to this Warriors team is going to show up in this game.
Yeah, I agree. I think Warriors, this is probably the best possible matchup you could have gotten in the 9-10. I think basically every team that was, potentially going to be in the play-in playing the Kings, they wanted Sacramento. Monk is probably going to be out.
And Herter's out as well.
Yeah, Herter's out. Sabonis was not great in the playoffs last year. And as you mentioned, Victor, the Warriors, it's cliche, but they have the pedigree. They have that, solid infrastructure with the team. So it bodes well. And even though they are older, I like their chances more than, say, a Laker team winning maybe back-to-back games, stealing that 8 seed. So yeah, definitely, despite the home court, I'm going to take the Warriors in this one.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure this Warriors team didn't lose before like the NBA Finals for like 5 years or something before last year, losing to the Lakers. So
because
of
the one
course
year they
didn't.
missed the playoffs.
Well, yes, they missed the playoffs a couple years, but yeah, for the Kings, I mean, yeah, every team in the West wanted the Kings. They're banged up. Fox was great last year in the clutch. He hasn't been as good this year, at least consistently. Sabonis racks up a lot of double-doubles. Not sure how much that, adds to winning. They just don't have a lot of pieces. Like, I think Keon Ellis, they're relying on him a lot. He didn't even play last year, really. They still have, like, Davion Mitchell. They're just relying on, like, a lot of other pieces. And last year, Warriors knocked off the Kings in 7 games, and that was a Game 7 record for Steph Curry that lasted 2 weeks before Tatum beat it. But that was a close game the entire way. Like, they needed every single one of those points. Tatum was sort of stat padding near like the fourth quarter. I mean, maybe there's no such thing as that in a Game 7, but that shows Curry's performance. He absolutely carried them. But the question for the Warriors, will Klay Thompson be Klay Thompson?
That is true. But I just think, like John mentioned, the Kings' losses are just, I feel like, enough to just put the Warriors over the edge. Like, Malik Monk was so big for them last year in the playoffs, and him and Fox just playing off each other like they did in college. They're gonna miss that. And also Kevin Huerter, another shooter on the outside. You got to keep up with these Warriors. Steph's gonna bring it. No matter what, they're gonna find their offense. So, even if it's from Trace,
I mean, he's playing a lot.
Yeah, he's been playing a lot, starting some games too.
Yeah, Steve Kerr should definitely play him more. We'll say that.
Yeah, but back to Klay, he has been really strong recently, which bodes well for the Warriors. He's shooting 43% from 3, averaging 23 a game in the month of April. You do want, that kind of guy to, like, even if he is off the bench, just hit a few shots, space the floor. Obviously, Curry's going to do his thing. And, like, I don't love this Warriors team, but I just think, like we keep saying, I just think the Kings are too banged up. It's kind of almost like a mini play-in version of the Lakers-Memphis series last year, where Memphis had all the injuries, and it seemed like the Lakers, like they were the 7 seed, but they were favored. They got the perfect situation. That's what it looks like to me for the Warriors. The real question, assuming they do win, is who will they play in that next game for the 8 seed? And, how does it look? Because the Pelicans or Lakers, I would not want to face either.
Yeah, I agree with that. So you guys want to move on to the East plan?
Yeah. I guess let's get the most boring one out of the way. Bulls Hawks. This is kind of, I think, who's going to be the best player on the floor? That's my question for this series. Is Trae Young or DeJounte Murray? Like, who's going to be the one to take over for that team? And the Bulls just need, like, Kobe White needs to have a series, like, or not a series, a game, or else I don't really think that this team has a chance of having the best player on the floor. Either him or DeRozan is going to have to carry the load offensively, because I just don't think this team's offense is that strong. I don't think that they create great shots. I think DeRozan takes a lot of mid-ranges, like, just not very efficient. But we've seen Trae Young in the playoffs before, and he's played well. For me, I just feel like he's the best player in this series, and I just don't want to face him, or in this game, and I just wouldn't want to face him.
Yeah, this one, I'll just be honest to the audience, not super excited for this one. Clearly my least favorite of the play-in matchups. It's funny, they've been slated at the 9-10, it seems, for like a month and a half. If you're the coach of one of these teams, are you just showing film on off days like a month away? Like, all right, we're probably going to play the Hawks. Let's prep for this one.
Yeah. It was who was home.
Yeah, exactly. But I will say, I do think the Bulls are kind of frisky for a team that's below 500. The Hawks, they have talent, but I've never really believed in them this year. The Bulls, they'll win games against good teams. They'll compete. They even against the Knicks yesterday, they are a tough out, and almost made the playoffs last year. So I'd pick them. And then it wouldn't, like, if they played, let's say, Miami for the 8th seed, Miami loses, the Bulls win. I think the Bulls could beat the Heat. They almost did last year.
It's true.
That would
It's
not
true.
shock me. So
DeMar
I could,
DeRozan's daughter in the building.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Screaming during free throws.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I could see the Bulls end up the 8th seed. I don't really believe in the Hawks, though.
I definitely agree with that. You look at their net rating of Trae Young and DeJounte Murray on the floor, minus 5.8. When Trae Young's the only one on the floor, plus 2.1. And when Murray is on, 1.1 net rating. So, I mean, they can't really play together, but I agree. The Hawks are, I mean, they beat the Celtics twice. You can't, completely count them out, but they're just not a team that you think is, super good. When they made that playoff run to the Eastern Conference Finals, that was a while ago at this point, they were just much better together, and their defense really started ramping up. Their defense is not very good. Now, for the Bulls, their defense also isn't very good, but they have Alex Caruso, and Alex Caruso would be by far the best defender. I like DeAndre Hunter as well, but Alex Caruso is so good on defense, especially guarding guards. You have Kobe White's emergence. I do wonder about like Nikola Vucevic. I just don't think he's a good player, but yeah, I think the Bulls can get it done. DeMar performing in the playoffs is always a question mark, but I think he'll hit some clutch shots.
Yeah, that's the reason I kind of question this offense. Is I'm looking at the box score from the Heat game last year, and the Bulls put up 91 points, and that's when they had Zach LaVine, who's this amazing scorer. But he shoots 6 of 21. Kobe White has a solid game off the bench, and I don't like. For me, it's just the experience of this team playing together in the playoffs just isn't there for me, and I don't know. It's hard to be confident in this team for me.
That's fair.
I would agree with that. So let's move on to the 7 versus 8, which is a very interesting matchup. The Sixers and the Heat, both teams who most people would say are top 5 or 6 in the East.
Yeah, this is a fun one. Last year, we were a game away from this being the Eastern Conference Finals, and now it's a playing game, which is kind of nuts. But I think I'll be basic like most people. I believe in Philly more, like a lot more. I know they've had playoff issues in the past. Embiid, who's looked good when he's come back, but you always question the injury stuff and him in big games. But I'm going to say it. I thought this last year, and it burned me. I'm just going to say it again. I do not believe in this Heat team. I know they phone in the regular season, and they go for it in the playoffs. They have great coaching, but I just don't love what I'm seeing. I think Philly's upside's much better, and they're at home. If I were, the Knicks, I'm rooting for Miami in this game. I don't want to play Embiid, who's a top, 5, 6 guy in the league, probably.
You can say top 5. You can say top 4, huh?
Yeah. Round 1, that'd be kind of worst case scenario. So hope for those teams, you hope Miami wins, but I think Philly will pull this one out.
I agree. I think the Sixers are the more scary team because they have that star power. And not that the Heat don't. Like, Jimmy is a superstar in the playoffs, as we know. But I just think, like, with the way Maxi's also playing this year, this team is not someone I want to face. And when he's closing games down the stretch, it's gonna be him versus Jimmy in the end of the game. Like, who's gonna hit a shot? And we've seen Jimmy do it before, and we've seen other guys on the Heat also step up before. But I just think Maxey and Embiid is just a little too much for this Heat team, and it's kind of hard to imagine an 8 seed making a run 2 years in a row.
I'm kind of surprised people are off the Heat now, because I thought I was on, not the majority side when I said the Sixers are a lot better than the Heat, but now we're all agreeing to that. People think every year you can just do nothing in the regular season and make a run, because the Heat did it last year. Don't think it can happen again. Maybe I'll eat my words on that, but this team isn't as good, and I know they always have players step up, but they haven't been that good this year. Like, what, regular season game can you point to and say, wow, that really, stamps the Heat as being really good? I can't even think of a game that was like.
You could have said the same thing last year, though.
You could have.
That's an interesting thing.
Yeah. I mean, they've really not been involved in a lot of things, and maybe that's where they fly under the radar. But for the Sixers, they've won 8 straight games. Hopefully Embiid's healthy enough. I'm not sure if he's going to be at 100% because he just got injured again a couple games ago, but went back in the game. And with Maxey, they added Oubre, so they don't have to rely on Tobias Harris so much, which is definitely a positive thing. But Yeah, the Bam Embiid matchup is going to be really interesting. And then who's going to guard Butler on the other side? You're not sure, but the Sixers are getting a lot healthier. They have DeAnthony Melton back as well. This should be a really fun game, but I think people are severely sleeping on Philly. I know they flop every year. I've said it before too, but for a round one team, whew, that is a tough matchup.
Yeah, I mean they have their playoff kind of ghosts and skeletons in the closet, but they, as a 7 seed, they just are much better than that. Obviously, we don't know if Embiid's going to be at this level or this level of health, but start of the year, they were almost Celtics-ish with their win percentage, with how he was playing. And now you get that team round one and you're the 2 seed. It's tough. I said this probably 2 weeks ago now. I think the top seed should be able to pick who they play in the playoffs for this exact reason. I don't if you're the Knicks, you're not picking Philly. You'd rather play Indiana. You'd probably rather play Orlando. And I still would feel confident if I was a Knicks fan, but it's just tough. But good for Philly. It'll be interesting. Probably the best playing game in terms of the 2 teams, their quality that we may have had since they've added it. So should be fun.
Yeah, I think that's interesting take. I saw that from Kevin O'Connor too, of picking what team you want to play. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think it should kind of just be, how it goes. Like imagine that for like every playoff race. That would be so boring. Like you just picking the match. Oh, you guys had a great regular season. All right, Orlando, we're playing you first.
Yeah, but that added good, tension, potential beef in the series. Like, oh, you picked us.
Yeah, it makes the lower seed want to win more.
Yeah,
too.
I guess. But then, how do you work out the second round? You once again just pick.
No, that's a good question. Obviously, we'd have to work.
Yeah,
out.
I mean, it's not an idea that I think would cross like Adam Silver's mind. But I will say the play-in. We were always talking about the Bulls selling at the trade deadline and stuff like that. The play-in has made teams like not sell and hold on to everything. So Adam Silver is probably like, wow, this is a major success.
Yeah.
That and the in-season tournament.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, people question both ideas and both have been
I definitely question the in-season tournament, but we talked about it earlier in the year. Like it just provided entertainment for the beginning of the year, reason to watch, and although I don't think much weight should be held on who wins that, but I'm still not a fan of the play-in. I just 20 teams make the playoffs. Like, yes, it's produced some good games, but the regular season just feels so pointless when 20 teams make the playoffs.
That's a fair point.
And you play 82 games and teams are only separated by 2 or 3 games. It's just like, come on, let's tighten it up. Yeah, I even thought 16 was always a lot, and for the NBA. I'm not saying that should have been changed, but I always thought just like, wow, like you're getting these useless 8 seeds, or something.
Yeah,
like
giving them the chance with the one game. I mean, they have to win 2 or whatever, and the 9 and 10 obviously has to go away from home. But that's an interesting point. All right, we got anything else to add in the play-in for now?
No, I think we covered it.
All right, so do we want to talk about potential matchups, or should we just go the matchups that we have now? What do you guys think?
I think we should do the matchups we have now because we've kind of danced around the potential ones by talking about the play-in teams.
So should we start Bucks Pacers?
Sure.
All right, that's a fun one.
It is a fun one, especially because we don't know when Giannis will come back, if he's just going to miss one game, if he's going to miss multiple games. But this is a Pacers team that has played the Bucks tough all year. All year they've played this team tough, and I'm interested to see what this kind of fast-paced Pacers team brings to the playoffs and like how their game kind of changes, especially against a strong defensive team like the Bucks.
Yeah, if this one you're probably nervous about as a Bucks fan. I think more so just because the Giannis injury, but I feel like the Bucks shouldn't be super afraid if Giannis is healthy. I know they weren't great early in the year, but a lot of those games were pre-All-Star break back in like November, and the season series stuff. You kind of touched on it, Victor, with how long the regular season is and how many teams make it. The motivations are never kind of set like that heavy or like in the regular season, especially early on. I think if you get Giannis playing all the games or missing even game 1, I feel pretty confident the Bucks will win. That being said, I've always kind of given the Bucks the benefit of the doubt this year just because they have won before, because they do have Giannis. and they've had these horrible stretches, including the past few weeks. So it'll be a fun watch, but I don't quite believe in the Pacers as much as some people do.
And I can understand that because I think like they've kind of fallen off as of late. You know, we talked about risers and stuff, and I thought this team would be on the rise after the Siakam trade, but they've kind of just like been at like a stalemate. It feels like they haven't really improved. They haven't, and like Tyrese hasn't been playing as well. Not he's still playing good basketball, but earlier in the season,
Yeah.
the first few months, he was averaging over 20. In February and March, he averaged just 16.
Mhm.
You know, he's still a great, efficient player, but you know, it just looks like they're kind of slowing down a little bit and not really, maybe not limping into the playoffs, but not going as strong as I thought they would.
Yeah, I mean, they had a great game against the Hawks where they nearly put up like what 160 or something like
Yeah,
that.
Yeah.
they did
But,
win by like 40 yesterday.
Yeah, I mean
but-
that's an impressive win. But once again, I think people they care too much. I think about the regular season, John. Like you're saying, I know the Bucks lost to the Pacers 4-1 the season series. And as much as me being a Celtics fan want the Bucks to lose, I mean they're the better team in a playoff scenario when you make adjustments, and maybe that doesn't help the Bucks too much with Doc Rivers there.
Yeah.
But still, you have Giannis, you have Middleton, who's hopefully going to be healthy enough. You know, they just get, if Giannis misses the first two games and they split, you're fine going to Indiana, tied 1-1. The Pacers probably won the Bucks because they're just like completely different teams in terms of like pace. That's how the Pacers won a bunch of games, is they were just running up and down the floor. The Bucks are an older team for the most part. So that really helps the Pacers out. But in a playoff scenario, it slows down. It's going to be tough. Also, Giannis just dominates the Pacers usually. So for the Pacers, you make the decision, do you want to give up like, you know, the 10 assists to Giannis and 30 points or like the 40-point game?
Yeah.
That's something you have to balance.
Well, I think that's one of the most interesting things about playing this Bucks team is a lot of times in the past, you'd see teams be like, all right, let Giannis drive. Let him get 50. Let him do that. Just don't let their shooters on the outside shoot. Now they have a whole new aspect in Dame Lillard. And obviously he might not have had his best regular season, but he's going to be a threat in the playoffs. We know that. And I just think that brings a whole new dynamic to this Bucks team that they didn't have in previous years in the playoffs. So you can't really just say like, all right, Giannis, go get your 50 and leave all the other and don't let the other guys shoot. Dame's going to get his touches and he's going to be taking his shots.
Yeah, the thing I'm most interested to see, other than just Giannis's health, is, and Adam, you touched on this, just the Pacers' kind of pace of play, really fast pace, up and down, which a lot of the season, especially early, was effective because you see this team, you know, once every month or
Yeah.
two. How will that look? You're playing a team, you know, 5, 6, 7 times in the course of 2 weeks. You have time to adjust. I have my doubts that the pace will be able to kind of, that I don't want to call it a gimmick, but that'll hold up and allow them to win the series. But if it does, then maybe we see teams playing like this in the future, just especially if you have youth, if you do have shooting, if you have a great playmaker like Halliburton,
Yeah.
just kind of run and see what happens, and you might be able to, you know, upset some top teams.
And one more thing I'll say in this game, I found this interesting, a Twitter thread about who's the ranking of the best players in the series. Obviously, you have Giannis 1, probably
Mhm.
Halliburton 2, and then Damon Siakam 3 and 4. I'm not sure what order you want to put those in. Who's the 5th best player in the series?
That's a good question.
That's a good question.
I'd probably, I don't know.
Who's the 5th best player in this series?
So yeah, the argument would,
Portis, is that too high for him?
I was
I
thinking
don't think that's a crazy take.
I don't-
Like,
I
in
think-
the playoffs, he comes alive.
that's
Like,
interesting. People were going between Middleton and Miles Turner. And I
Yeah.
think Miles Turner
Miles Turner
he's
could be
been
the
great
answer.
this year.
Yeah, he
I
has
know
been.
maybe that's a hot take, but I mean, Miles Turner's a really good defender and can space the floor. When he's hitting threes, the Pacers are really hard to beat because he's always open.
That's what it's all about, though, is like in this playoffs, like just who's going to knock down their shots, like who's going to hit their open shots, what players are going to show up, what
Malik
players aren't.
Beasley.
And
always
hopefully
gonna have
Miles
that
Turner does for the Pacers, because that would be a huge boost for them if he is the same player that he was in the regular season. But you don't always see that. So
Yeah, it's a shame because I am a Chris Middleton guy, or have been. He has not been that awesome post-injury. This year, he hasn't looked terrible. He is shooting 38% from 3, which bodes well for Milwaukee. But I just don't trust him the way I did, in 2021 when he was closing big games for them on their way to their title run. Turner, I love the two-way impact and just a big that can space the floor that way. So I wouldn't hate it if someone put Turner over Middleton. I think that makes more sense at this point in their careers.
All right, let's move on to the 4-5 matchup in the East. It's the Cavaliers and Magic, a series that will be played exclusively on NBA TV. I made that joke 2 months ago, and then of course they end up playing. And then I see a tweet pop off. I'm like, I had the idea first, but yeah, should be a fun one.
Yeah,
but yeah.
The series is interesting. I think these teams are very different. The Magic are kind of, I think, not a big surprise, but definitely a little surprise to a lot of people about how young they are and how they've kind of just like played like I don't want to say like a veteran team, but they just look like they play together well. Like they all gel well, they all mesh well. But another thing I've talked about all year is this Cavs team, I think, is extremely well coached. They've missed pieces all year, and they've just been strong defensively and really haven't backed down. And I think they get a very good draw here with the Magic. And I've really liked this Cavs team all year, and I like them in this series as well.
Yeah, I actually am really excited for this one, even if the casual NBA fan isn't. It's a cool matchup because they're kind of similar teams with the way they play. Really strong defensively, but their offense, especially in the half court, can slow down. You have question marks about that. They're a little star dependent, especially the Magic with Paolo in terms of the offensive side. But on defense, they're really disruptive, really athletic, young, a lot of length, especially with Orlando. And I think almost both these teams are kind of happy they're playing each other. I think the Magic, they aren't afraid to play a Cavs team that I know they made the playoffs last year, but little playoff experience. They got completely handled against the Knicks. And the Cavs, it's the exact, flip side of that, where you're playing almost kind of your doppelganger with great defense, potentially slow half-court offense, but they have no playoff experience. I don't think home court's a big factor. So this could be one of those, even though it is on NBA TV, go 6-7.
Hey, they might get a TNT game.
Yeah, maybe if it goes to 7. But I think this one could be a longer series with some fun games, lower scores, which probably leads to closer, finishes, which is always fun. So honestly, this is maybe my favorite series to watch for the East round one. That one or probably Milwaukee, Indiana. We'll see how the play-in shakes out, obviously.
Yeah, really, it's two defenses that are really good. And the half-court offenses, you have major question marks. Who's the second guy for Cleveland? Darius Garland's not been that good. Jared Allen, Evan Mobley, not sure if they're ready for, that physical contact, which the Magic really have. They're a physical defensive team. So it should be really fun to watch. But yeah, I think the time to move into the West because we don't have too much time left.
Yeah, I feel like we covered Timberwolves Suns a good amount, so I feel like we could go to Clippers Mavs. What do you think?
Oh, I'll throw it out there. The Suns should be favored in this series against the Wolves.
Wow. Okay.
I do not think it should even be close.
That honestly wouldn't surprise me. Like we talked about this earlier, the veteran aspect of the Suns team, the Timberwolves, kind of riding on their new big man duo and the young stud of Ant. It's just inexperience. And like you said earlier, Beal's really come along, and that's a huge upgrade for the Suns. And like you said, they doubled down. It's really a matter of, are the Suns guys going to perform, and is their lack of depth really going to matter?
Yeah, I do understand why you're saying that, Adam. I wouldn't go quite that far, just because the Timberwolves, I do believe in. Towns is iffy, and although Gobert hasn't been great in playoff games, if Nurkic is in the game, you could kind of plan him on him.
Yeah.
I do just like the Timberwolves' youth, the energy, the defense. The Suns, what if Beal does kind of revert back to first half of the season Beal? What if they don't get any bench points, kind of like last year where basically every game that the bench didn't score, they lost? What if the fourth quarter woes continue in the playoffs and,
Right.
Games are a little lower scoring, a little closer? Even though I don't think home court's a huge deal, and I definitely think it should be a close series in terms of who's favored. I think Minnesota has kind of earned that right. even though Phoenix is a little terrifying as a road team.
Yeah, I will say Phoenix was the only team that brought Denver to 6 games last year. And I think if you're the Timberwolves, besides the Nuggets, I think the Suns are the second worst matchup for them. So that's really tough when you were in position to get the 1 seed. So that's what I'll say on that for now.
Yeah, but I'm most excited for this series, the Clippers Mavericks, out of all series, out of all games, because we've seen this one before. We've seen Luka have sick moments in this series, even against great defensive players. And I'm really curious because the Mavs are hot right now, and they're not a team that I want to face. I said this earlier. If you have Luka, you're in every game. You're in every series, in my opinion. It's kind of like the LeBron
You have the
effect
best
in that
player.
opinion.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, I'm really excited for this series because I think this is one of the better Clippers teams that we've seen in the past couple of years. One of the, maybe not more healthy, but just like most consistent, I'd say. A lot of times there were questions in the past, but
Yeah, it was that game limit that they implemented.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
But I'm so excited to watch Luka in this series because I think if he matches up with a Thunder team in the second round or something like that, or he could give them a run for their money.
Yeah, this one's interesting to me because I agree with everything you guys are saying. I think I know the Clippers are favored, but it wouldn't shock me if Dallas were favored in the series because they have been better the past month or so. Luka, he could win any game, and the Clippers have been shaky. But the Clippers' ceiling as a team, I think, is just higher. They have more guys, more depth. When they were on their awesome stretch, December, January, firing on all cylinders, it looked better than even the Mavs have been the past month or so. This one is probably the best series out of any of them. I agree with you, Victor. They have the history. They've played, I think, 2 series in the past 4 years.
The bubble and then the year after.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So Luka has played Kawhi and Paul George before. Now Harden's in the mix. Kyrie's in the mix. Kyrie, a normal season from him, relatively healthy,
Yeah.
which is rare but fun. A lot of star power, and it's a cool mix of play styles. You have one team that's older. At least when they were good, they were moving the ball, really strong offensively. And then Dallas is more, offensive, but they've been really strong defensively the past month. Should be fun, and it is the Clippers, so it would not shock me if they blow this one to Luka.
I mean, yeah, the history's right there in the bubble. I think Clippers took it in 6. Next year it was Clippers in 7.
Yeah.
And that was the series where Kawhi Leonard shot like 60% from the floor or something. He was ridiculous.
He was actually a robot that series.
But Luka with Kyrie, I mean, it's a different second option. You obviously had Porzingis there. You still have a guy like Tim Hardaway, but you're not relying on those guys so much. Obviously, Porzingis isn't there. Instead, you have Kyrie Irving. Once again, off the court, you can question him.
Yep.
On the court, he's been terrific this year. And also, when Luka's playing defense, they're even tougher to beat. I know he's never going to be the best defender, but if he's not like a super negative on defense, he brings so much on the offensive end that, you can have other guys like Derek Jones Jr. has been a great defender, Maxi Kleba, Derek Lively, and Daniel Gafford, 2 lob threats. That's huge.
Yeah, and I think Kyrie is somebody that really hasn't been talked about a lot this year because he's been overshadowed by like Luka's stats, but he's really having a very good year. Quietly, honestly, one of his best, like averaging 25. He's only done that maybe 4 or 5 other times in his like 11 years. But and he's shooting extremely efficient, shooting 41 from 3. He's only shot above 40 3 times in his career. I think just playing alongside Luka is, getting him more open one-on-one opportunities where he could just shine and kind of be himself and be his talent.
Yeah, I think even though there's been a lot of pro Mavericks buzz going around, including on this podcast right here, the fear if you're a Dallas fan is that, what we saw from Kawhi last year in the 2 or 3 games he played in round 1, he looked like he was a top 5 player. Like he was just kind of saving. He was going at 80% speed all year, and then he, went up that gear in the playoffs, and he was awesome. If he does that and is healthy for the series, I think he rivals Luka as the best guy, especially on both ends, with the support. That is what the fear would be if you're a Mavericks fan. But if they look kind of how they've looked the past month and they are sluggish, I think the Mavs do win this series. And either team is a tough out round 2. Just this could be like a second round series, and it would not surprise me. The fact that we get it round 1 is really fun, so I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think if Kawhi does what Luka does, or at least near that level, I think the Mavs are in a tough position. I will say that. Let's close it off with one hot take or something that could possibly happen. Why not? Off the cuff.
Off the cuff.
Do you want me to go first?
Yeah,
You
you
go
go
first.
You go
All right. My hot take. First of all, I will say that the Thunder don't want to face the Lakers. So if the Lakers lose, Thunder fans would be terrified. As good of a regular season as they've had. And the other one is the Suns will sweep the Timberwolves.
Wow.
Wow.
Sweep. Okay.
Come back to them 3 days when they're down 1-0.
Yeah, exactly. I'll say, yeah, but I don't even think the Lakers would throw the game.
You could be like Cavs Magic. The winner beats the Celtics.
No, I can't go there. I'll say, I don't know if that doesn't qualify as a hot take. Milwaukee's too good. I'll say Lakers, intentionally or not, lose the first game, win to become the 8th seed, and they beat the Thunder in round 1.
I like that.
All right. I didn't really have one coming into this, and we just talked about how good of a first round series this is. So this is probably not a good hot take, but Mavs to the finals.
That's a good
Wow,
hot
no,
take. That is a really good hot
Mavs
take.
to the finals.
Yeah.
It's a hot take for sure. It's not something I'm strongly advocating for because of how hard their path is. But like we talked about this earlier, playing difficult teams, getting over the hump gives you that confidence for the next series. And if Luka gets hot, they've been hot recently. You know, the odds are there. They could definitely do it.
All right, those are 3 interesting hot takes.
Yeah.
I think that's going to wrap it up on the Make It Take It podcast. We'll see if those takes burn us. But for John Yaley, Victor Kustin, Aidan Mattel, our producer, I'm Adam Oppenheim. Thank you for tuning in to the Make It Take It podcast.